Welcome to The Bold Blueprint, a podcast for modern educators who dare to think differently. Here we explore the intersection of education and leadership, diving into bold strategies, innovative teaching, and the mindset shifts that drive real impact. Whether you're in the classroom, leading a team, or shaping the future of education, this is your space to learn, grow, and lead with confidence. Hey Barbie, how you doing? Hello, listeners. Hello, everybody.
Hello. Thank you for joining us whenever you're joining us, whether it's now, a year, 2, 10. Oh, that's creepy, actually. 10 years. Oh.
Gosh, it's amazing how quick 10 years goes, though.
Mhm.
I was looking at some photos the other day, and I've got a friend who is from overseas. She's an Irish person, and she has been back in Ireland for 3 years, and she's here. And she actually came to my wedding, and she was one of the bridesmaids, and she didn't end up doing a speech, and she gave it to me as a speech the other day. And she wrote about our history of our friendship that has sparked way over 10 years. And it's amazing how all those memories just flood back, and you're just like, wow, blink of an eye, 10 years goes so quick.
It does. It does. It's like some things, even I realized something the other day. I'm like, oh, wait, that was 20 years ago. I think it was wisdom teeth out. Someone on our team had, Steve had his wisdom teeth out, and I realized mine was 20 years ago, or maybe a little bit more. Um, it feels like yesterday, but oh my gosh, 20 years ago. And I think even the technology of whatever they do to take your wisdom teeth out is way different now. Oh,
Yeah. Do you know, this episode reminds me of, thinking about 20 to 30 years ago. Are you a Friends person or a Seinfeld person? I feel like everyone's in one of those two categories.
also talking about that last night. I actually prefer Friends than Seinfeld. I don't mind either,
Yeah.
but I would, if I could pick one to watch, I'd choose Friends.
You're more of a Friends. I
What
think
about you?
last of the time, like test of time. I was a Seinfeld person. I remember at the end of every season, they'd always do a bit of a recap about what the last couple of episodes were. Did you remember that?
Of Seinfeld?
Well, Seinfeld would do it, but I don't know if Friends had that episode where they
No.
put different shorts. And I think today's episode is really about that. Like, we've had some really amazing guests and some great discussions and some good dialogue. Gosh, trying to think through, we had Dr. Pun, we had Robin Munro Miller. Who else have we had on the podcast?
We've had some people still at the ground level doing amazing things. We had Daniel on the last episode. I've had so many people DM me about that episode, and well, all of them, but that one, and especially just his passion. People
Yeah.
were like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I've seen that amount of passion." I think for his level of leadership too, people were like surprised in a good way of seeing how engaged was at the ground level still. Um, and just all the strategies. And we've also had Eric as well, who is still compliance based, but still semi ground level. I think we've had a mixed bag. I had to double check because I feel like
We had HR people
yes,
talking about all the
funny.
stuff like, with OnlyFans. And, I guess I've been thinking a lot, Barbie, around this podcast, and I couldn't imagine the conversations that we've had over this season, what we're really trying to do about, why we're actually doing this in the first place and how we're trying to give back to the sector. And I know I see online and even in where I work at early learning management, people logging in and having conversations. And it's actually really interesting who who is actually tapping in and listening. I don't know. It's funny when we do these podcasts, like we do them, we do the recording and off they go, and you just never know where it's going to take us.
Yeah. Like I'm using this as a podcast studio at a co-work I use, and there's other people that do podcasts here. And a couple of weeks ago, they're like, "Oh, what's your downloads?" I'm like, and they're like, "Wait, what? You don't know your downloads?" I'm like, no. um, I don't know. I actually prompted enough someone on our team. I'm like, hey, what's the download? Someone asked me and I don't know. It's not that I didn't care, but I think it was just that because it's like out in the ether and
Yeah,
you don't know if there's one or 100 or 1,000. Um,
yeah, it's true. But it's been really interesting getting some of the guests that have come on, and we do a little pre-discussion, and then we hit the record button, and I think people go through a bit of energy of being a bit nervous to start with, and by the end, and when we
Mm,
end of that recording of about that people who are coming onto this podcast are really feeling like they're giving back, they're giving their words of wisdom, they're giving a perspective of their lived experience, and also hoping to make an impact across our sector of this national conversation. And I think, oh gosh, Robin's conversation wasn't really. I got a lot out of that. It was so nice seeing her after so many years, talking about the importance of play and the neurodiversity and the brain connect of and the importance of what we do in our space. Um, but I think, Barbie, I have to say thank you to you. I think for us to be able to sit together and, definitely both of us, in our very first episode shared a lot about our why, not coming from such great beginnings. And actually, I've actually found a bit more of my own confidence in sharing my story. I had a whole bunch of people join our team recently, and rather than just go through all the systems and processes like I normally would, I actually started talking about my why, about why I do what I do.
mm.
And it's not something that actually I still feel quite uncomfortable, a bit nervous about that. Um, but I went back to this podcast and thought to myself about, no, why am I doing what I'm doing? It's pretty cool.
Have you ever reflected on why you feel nervous on that sharing?
Yeah, it's fascinating. Hey, that's an interesting question. I haven't thought of it, but I'm based on you're asking me why I feel nervous about it. I think it's more about nervous of showing vulnerability, maybe, and a bit of. I just watched Brene Brown's Netflix series about call to action and about the fact over years what we do as human beings is that we armor up and we put armor around us to protect ourselves, and sharing such vulnerability around storytelling and my lived experience about the abuse that I endured throughout my early years, and being a homeless person. I guess it's interesting how people respond to that, because people are like, wow, that's inspiring. Oh my gosh, blah, blah, blah. But in my mind, I am showing a space that I'm worried about how people will receive that information.
Did you? I feel like I'm interviewing you. Sorry, I'm like asking you another question. No,
Yeah,
just the language, because I've learned a lot since we've been doing this podcast. So I've done my own internal growth externally, and it's been insane to do it side by side. But because I know why I didn't share, and it's silly, but I'm curious if yours is the similar, but you don't realize it. Um, I know for me, it was almost like I didn't want to bother other people with it. Like even though it can
yeah,
be so big, it wasn't that because that vulnerable side, I don't think I ever had an issue with. I didn't know any different, and it was just I didn't want to bother them with it. Feel like I think that comes from the self worth perspective, and I
yeah,
think in our profession, the education care sector, there's so many empathetic people, but sometimes that can be linked with that self worth thing because we put other people before ourselves. But I know genuinely that's why I struggled with it, and I think throughout my working life as well, especially in that space. Sometimes it's people's facial reactions too, of like, oh, um, might also play a part into it. They're not wanting to bother them. That facial reaction, that maybe it's pity. I don't know. I don't know if that's sometimes
yeah. I
what
think it's probably got a bit to do with pity. I would
mm,
say that would be a true thing that I would think through. Like, I don't really think I need that pity because I'm such
neither.
a determined, like self motivated, self driven human.
Mm, I
Yeah,
love you just said that. Can we like just put that on repeat for you? Can that be your ringtone? I'm just a self-driven, so determined human being.
well, true, it's true. I mean, I don't come from an arrogant place of saying that.
No, no, not. That's why I'm like, I've never heard you talk about yourself like that. That's in the sense where I'm like, oh, you need to like own that.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Barbie. You're awesome. I honestly, I genuinely have really enjoyed this first season of our podcast. And gosh, we've learned a lot, haven't we? I mean, even how to set up the technology and get everyone online, and some of the technology glitches that we've had. I think we need to do like a blooper reel or something.
I always say that. All those chats we have before and after, I'm like, oh, we should be just recording this, of yeah, behind the scenes. I probably wouldn't. I don't know how we get people to vote, but if you want a behind the scenes blooper reel, just let us know
I know.
to make it happen.
So what kind of conversation over the last couple of recordings have you felt has been a moment in time going, oh wow, that was fascinating.
I find, and I know this is for education and care, what we talk about, but a lot of the conversations lead me to my own thinking and what I'm doing in my own world, whether it's family or for myself. So the one you mentioned before with Robin about play, I wanted to double check what exactly. We don't create play; we create the conditions for play. I then also did a lot of reflection on what play was to me, and feel like I go deep too quickly if I keep talking. Especially I've realized like that I don't know if I did say it in the episode, but it was a lot of reflecting afterwards of like play. Like I gather basically saved me as a child, like that escape, that place to escape, no matter what environment you're in. And because of the imagination, I wasn't necessarily pretending you're somewhere else, but I probably did. But it's just that active play, like you can then tune out from everything that's around you to get you through those times, those years, even. And how important was that? And it was, yeah. I've been trying to write something on that too, because it was like after that episode, it led me on my own journey of that and to myself. And I think we spoke about it in it too, and that's why whether it's in early learning or English service, that environment and that ability to play is also so important. Um, that assumption children have it elsewhere isn't always correct, and having that safe place to play. And yeah, what about yourself?
What part?
Any random, I guess, journeys, especially knocking on from any of the episodes?
I think I would put it into two buckets to answer that question. I think what really resonated with me is how many important people there are in our sector, and I think
Mm,
there is a lot of really good people, and I think deep down, I think innately, majority of people in our sector are pretty special. I also think over the last 25 years, the sector has changed so much, and I think we're absolutely knocking at the door of massive reform in Australia, and I can feel it. It kind of brings me back to when the national quality standards and the quality framework came into play. I don't know if you feel that way, but it definitely feels like we're about to go down a pathway of mass change. Um,
mm,
and I think my biggest takeaway of the different people that we met were people who have seen problems, are solution driven human beings. Think about this idea of the importance of the work that we do. So, around children's safety, well-being, and also have been in the space for a long time and have seen a variety of concerns and issues as well that has helped them be the person who they are today. I don't think anyone that we met, except for Dr. Pun, being a university lecturer in mathematics, which was quite fascinating to see the parallels there.
mm-hmm,
Um, what an amazing human being. I mean, but I think that other people who've been in the sector um, have not done a PhD and a degree in this space. A lot of the people that we've met have actually learned the experience through many, many, many years and probably many, many mistakes and lots of conversation and that interconnection of people working together. Um, I don't know. I think that was pretty powerful for me. I don't think we can do this job alone based on just the organization or the service that we work at, but actually more broader around the about this national conversation, this national voice, and and I do think there's probably a bit of fear, I reckon, around are we doing things right, and I don't think that's a bad thing to ask because it means
mm-hmm.
looking inwardly to say, are we on track? Or are we not on track? And I think that's um, quite a confrontational question we should be asking ourselves.
And we're kind of like, especially in the profession, we're kind of meant to be doing that consistently anyway. And
Mm.
then I've never thought of it as a confrontational way, but that might be what, because I see a lot of resistance to critical reflection. Whereas for me, I'm the type of person that wants to change my room around every single day.
Well,
I did it Sunday, all Sunday. I got some like odd, oh, not odd news, just different news on the weekend, and then my reaction, even though I've been sick, was like, I'm just going to spend the whole day rearranging absolutely everything.
yeah.
Um, so I don't know why why the continuous improvement and change is fine with me, but I do find there's a bit of fear as well.
But you know what? I reckon in this season, we've got some people who were the supporters. So people supporting people who were actually doing the job. You know, like we had a compliance person, we had a HR person, you know, we had Robin. We have people who actually at the higher level support people who are actually in the classroom or in the service setting. And I reckon we've actually had people not on this podcast who should be.
Hmm.
You know, do you think?
Yeah, like an educator who's walked away from the profession, even.
Yeah, I reckon, like, someone who's just had enough and, like, "I'm out." Like, "I'm
Yeah,
sick of this." I think that would be a great discussion to have, like, why have they walked away and where did they go to? What transferable skills do they find elsewhere?
yeah, and it's like in a different business mindset. Um, they might look at why a client leaves them and full do analysis on it. And I'm not sure how much we put into why an educator might, whether it's leave our service or a profession, because that can help build a blueprint, again, whether it's service level or profession as a whole, of what's taking them out. I know in the recruitment space we hear so many different things, um, and data wise, there are all different things it points to of the like why. But I'd love to hear from different people because there's often multiple factors at play and all different professions, not ours, but curious why they leave ours. Like my husband, he was finance ASX and now does recruiting in like ECE, and oh, it's like it's a complete contrast of it. Um, I know for me as well, it's probably even just someone new to the profession,
Oh, that
whether.
would be really interesting, wouldn't it? Like, someone who's just starting out with no
Hmm.
years of experience and be completely fresh with wide e
Yeah,
eyes wide open.
yeah,
That would be interesting. I would love to invite an educator, you know, and that doesn't have to be someone, you know, who
yeah.
it could even be someone who may have been in another sector, you
Hmm.
know, mid 40s or a returning person after having coming in and, you know, starting for the first time and getting their kind of that would be really cool actually.
Yeah, I actually had dinner with someone last week. The the street I now live in is amazing. Everyone like catches up, but they caught up, and one of the mums in the street, I think she's 60, I'm not sure, but she's just enrolled in her Cert 3.
No
But
way.
talking about it, and I don't even think started. I think she was starting Monday, and we had dinner last week, and she'd already done her first aid. She'd already applied for a national criminal history degree. I'm like, oh, you don't even need that yet. But
Yeah,
she was so pumped, and the working with children check. She's like, I'm going to service, whatever it's called at the moment, the RTA, I still call it, but it's Service New South Wales to get the working with children chat. And
yeah,
she was just like, because her children are now grown, I think 25 or something, and she's just got so much love still to give. Doesn't have grandkids yet, and like that passion, and it's like the new educator to the profession, regardless of age, and that like that. I don't know what to call it. That look in the sparkle in the eye. It was like so strong and so excited when they spoke about it. And because sometimes we don't hear that side of it, we always hear the other side. I'm guilty of it too, especially with being a director for 10 years at the same service. You're like, oh, I just need a break, which doesn't help the conversation of those. Um, um, Sorry, well, that's me sidetracked on the people to come on.
and I would also love to hear the I would love to hear from a center manager who well, I'd actually like to hear from a couple of different center managers. One who might work in a big organization,
Mm,
what that looks like from a head office and what that lived experience would be in a space that is safe and doesn't compromise confidentiality, of course. You know, just to kind of get a bit of an understanding of that. And also, what is it like for a center manager who might work for an individually owned service, and do they feel isolated and alone and not feel connected to others, where maybe a center manager as part of a bigger group might feel connected but also have, you know, people's other priorities saying you need to do all these pieces of work. Be really fascinating to understand what that looks like, or even a center manager who doesn't even have access to social media. Like,
Yeah.
like how are they actually getting information?
Yeah, yeah, and how do they I think a lot of services rely on social media for communicating with their teams. Um, I know WhatsApp isn't social media, but I am old, so I put WhatsApp in that category too. I only signed in like last week to my WhatsApp because apparently people were messaging me and I never
Oh,
check it.
you've actually signed up. I didn't realize. Welcome to the
Oh, wait, no. Not that one, I haven't signed into that one.
okay,
Yeah,
fine.
that was my work email one. I'm
That's
still yet to do it. I put it in the social media category, so there might even be like that. I actually it's like I would love a contrast chat. So it's like the director of whether a big organization and even it could be even a small independent community-based not-for-profit.
yeah.
And it would be interesting if you had both on at the same time and their answers to the same question. What is exactly similar? Like, because I'm sure there's a perceived idea from both sides.
That's interesting. Well, Barbie, I mean, let's do a shout out to all the listeners or the viewers if you're looking at this on YouTube. We would love to hear from you. What kind of guests
Mm.
or topics would you like us to bring onto this podcast so we can absolutely be able to ask the questions? And not only what kind of guests, roles, what kind of questions do you want us to ask? Let us know because we can customize that for you to support you in this space as you get some hot tips or learnings or even moments of emotions that might you may not agree with. Like we welcome that as well.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I think that's something important in our space is the not always agreeing, because it's not meant to be like that at all. And then working through that or hearing others' perspectives, and that might work for them doesn't mean it has to work for you. Or rethinking your own thoughts of like, okay, maybe I should change my mindset on that. I can hear and see their points are valid. It
Mm.
might improve what I do. um, Usually I laugh at that because it's things I get told or I tell other people to do for their personal health and I don't do myself. So on that side, like take time for yourself. Yeah.
Well, we're mid-year. Can you believe that?
Mm,
I'm almost so July's an important month for me. So my partner's birthday is in 2 days' time. My birthday is at the end of, and my wedding anniversary is on July 10. So it is that time of year where I'm like, oh wow, there's so many kind of cool things. But it's like that mid-year check-in kind of how did that happen? We're actually mid-year. Like, it is about that kind of question sometimes thinking, I kind of feel like we're in February, March, but like, are we all okay? Are we doing all right mid-year
yeah.
cycle? Like, how are you feeling about the mid-year?
Well, I'm still in Sydney, so it does not feel like February or March. I think the last 2 weeks I had to pull out the thermals, and where I live, I haven't had to use them for like 5 years.
Yeah.
Um, it was that cold and rain. We had like a what do they call it? I think the
They
news
called it a hurricane.
sensationalized it.
No, that yeah, they called it
Rain bomb?
yeah, a tornado bomb or a hurricane
Yeah.
bomb. I'm like, they're just making up words now.
Yeah, yeah. I liked I think I was listening to Kyle Jackie O and Kyle goes on rants, but he went on a rant on that. Like, what are they doing? Like, just it's just rain. Like I'm like, yeah, I was thinking the same thing when you're talking about that. But that's what I've had. So I definitely can feel the winter. I my voice has been on and off. I realized I feel like I always just think it's a couple of weeks. It's since I saw a text when I sent something to someone of I couldn't do a call. I think it was like May 25th. So I made myself book the doctors later today because it's been too long. So I can feel that mid-year. I don't know. I don't know if it's cooler weather or if it's just the mid-year effect. I'd be interested to know actually for those in a warmer climate if they get the same type of feelings, and then those that
Yeah.
yeah
Well, I'm in a warmer climate, and it's interesting because I'm actually from the Blue Mountains, as have shared before, and it's like 2 degrees if you're lucky in summer. And I'm like, oh my God, it's so cold at 20 degrees, right? And people are still swimming in the beach. Um,
it's
but
a
I
top of 13 here right now at
oh,
11 a.m.
see that, my goodness. But I honestly think like the mid kind of, there is kind of like that emotional exhaustion and,
Yeah.
maybe a bit of the guilt and, you know, having a bit of survival mode in our space of, gosh, we're here. It kind of feels like the end of the year feeling is now. And I think looking online and finding some really important tips and tricks about like making sure that whatever's in our mindset about all the things that we want to try and do and achieve. And we live in this world of technology and lots of notification types coming around all the time, but like, how do we find time to get the thoughts out of our head on a piece of paper? I think helps a lot. And know that we may not have achieved all the goals that we wanted to achieve at this moment in time, and that's okay. Like, I know when I was a center manager, like sometimes our teams would fall behind on doing their monthly observations and doing different things like that, but also giving people strategies about we shouldn't always live in this world of having to catch up all the time. Like,
Mm.
sometimes okay to put a line in the sand and say, okay, let's just go from this moment on and move forward, rather than the big to-do list hanging out there that we can never actually fully cross off. And just knowing what we can actually achieve in our actual day is sometimes helpful. I know for us, we've actually just introduced a task management tool that's been really, really powerful, and everyone's fully embraced that. But there's just so much information coming at all the time, and I
Hmm.
I think that does affect people's mental health. And it does feel that the years just go so fast now because everything is so fast paced, and about how to find time to kind of recenter ourselves.
It's odd too, because yes, it's fast paced, but I find we pick not the fastest way to get the answer. No one picks up the call, the phone.
Oh my God, I tell you about this all the time. I'm like, go old school, just pick up the book. Like,
And I'm not as much of a phone person. I don't know why there's some, it's not a phobia of it. I don't know. Whereas James, my husband, he's like, just call them. When I'm like, oh, I haven't heard back from blah blah. He's like, have you called them? No. Like I think we do that. Everyone has just gotten so used to the written communication methods, the billion notifications. I turn my Teams on Do Not Disturb, so I just don't get all the pop-ups. I'm not on Do Not Disturb. It's just, I think
yeah.
it takes you 20 minutes to refocus to whatever you were working on. And I am pretty open with having ADHD. If it takes someone with a neurotypical brain 20 minutes, it takes me so much longer to go back on task. It's like the end of the day, and I'm like, what have I even done? If I can be all on the socials and communications, or I have to be all off it. I kind of try and balance both within my day of what I can do. I know for myself, but
Well, I think it's not just you, hey, and I don't think there's any badge for any kind of burnout, and I
no.
think sometimes we go through our day to day life, and everything just continues to build upon. And I think that is something I just keep going back to Robin's. I like we had so many great guests, and I just think Robin was specifically a really good guest, especially when she talked about just have fun for fun's sake. Like, get out and be with the children and do what makes you happy as much as it is for the children in a safe environment, making sure that the risk assessments training and like supervision and everything
Hmm.
is in play. But carving time, not just about getting through a task list and a to-do list, but actually do what we actually signed up for when we found a job on Seek or wherever we found the job, and go and do that fun thing sometimes, put everything out to the wind and actually be with children and spend time with children, and really have a joyful moment with the educators that you work with. And I think it is probably a good time, especially when weather is a bit gloomy around the country. And sometimes our emotions can be led by the emotions of the weather,
Yep.
but also what we're seeing on the news. The news is not a happy place to be right now. And of course, we need to have a really important conversation about safety in our sector. But like, if you look at overseas politics and you look at, you know, the stuff happening in other parts of the world, it's not a happy place. And I think it's important that we find a space that can create joy for us as team members, but also children are exposed to these images and these conversations as well. While they may not rightly be there in the middle of the conversation, they may have awareness of what's going around in the world as well. And
Mm.
I don't know if you resonate with that at all, Barbie, but there is a lot going on right now.
Yeah, no, and I noticed, especially with our nearly 6 year old, I can't believe she's nearly six. She's always listening, except for when you're asking her something.
Yeah.
Um, no matter what the conversation is. And it depends what part they hear, how they might interpret it. It depends if they hear like a split second of news, how that's interpreted to them or what it was. And the news always leads with nothing great. We tend to not have it on. The grandparents do though. So and then even getting in the car and the radio, if that's on, it could be just on straight away and they hear something. There's so many different things, or even just overhearing other people talk. You can be just in Kmart and there's people next to you talking about something. There's just so many different places they can hear about it, whether it's locally, national, or in the world. And then I know as a parent, for me, it's having those conversations with the kids. I have to admit, half the time when I think she's seen something and cares, she doesn't.
Yeah.
And then later with something really random, she'll like ask you at bedtime, and you're like, it's not even on your radar of like that even she heard or like anything that matters. Like it's just and then how they interpret it. And same with educators. Sometimes how we say things don't always know how that knock on might be to a child or how we deliver what we're doing. Um, this is me being sidetracked, but even when you do changes in your service, I don't know if we're always great at explaining to children why.
Oh, yeah, true.
Um, they don't know if they're changing it because someone's been naughty, we have to do this now, or like in the sense of it could be just like, oh, we want to make it better for you, like even using that language for them. And that's why we're tweaking this and having their input can, I think, change their whole outlook on what's happening around them. That I guess it's communication there.
Yeah, and I think there's been some things that I've been thinking through, and I think this idea of psychological safety
Mm,
and compliance requirements,
yeah.
making sure that I mean some of the narrative that I know I've been sharing across this last couple of podcasts is that leadership, no matter the title of leadership, I know that I'm in a leadership role because my job title says that. And
Mm.
I know center managers or center directors or coordinators are in a leadership role because that's their job title. But in the eyes of a child, the child, your educators are the superheroes, right? And children see, no matter the age group of the educators in the rooms, as leaders. If you think about going through primary school and high school as a child, you would have thought as your teacher in a classroom setting as the person who is in charge of the room, right? And I think some things that I've taken away from these last couple of sessions is that as an educator in a classroom or in a service at after school care program, we do have the empowerment of ourselves to help with inductions.
Mhm.
Empowerment of ourselves when we're welcoming another educator into our space to ensure that they know what that classroom environment is about, where the medical action plans are, talking and giving some history of the children's backgrounds, talking about supervisional stations and safety and well-being in the environments, and making sure if we're seeing educators that should be interacting differently, how to make sure it's not just someone who's not in that classroom or that environment, that it's all our obligation to make sure that safety of children and people being inducted into the space is not just one person job, it's an everybody job. uh,
Yeah.
I think
I was. Oh, sorry. You go.
No, I think it's important to say because I think I'm bringing myself back to the 17, 18 version of myself, and I didn't know that I could do that. I didn't know that I could, and it was scary. Like if I saw
Mm.
doing something that that they may not have done, and I'm not talking about the stuff that's in the media at the moment. I'm talking about even where to find things and where the EpiPens are and all those things. Like I didn't know that I could go, hey, by the way, I thought I'd get in trouble if I said something, and I know it can be quite intimidating to make have a voice. But I implore all educators, no matter role types, who are listening, to ensure that you have a duty of care to advocate for your space, to make sure that everyone knows what should and shouldn't occur in your environment. And if you see something that is not feeling right, or talk to the person that you're in a classroom setting with, like have an actual conversation with that person, but also seek advice of how to do that. Don't just wait and just go, oh, should I say something or not? Like, go to your center manager or your coordinator, go to another peer, ask questions about maybe getting some coaching for yourself, and then put it into practice. Actually do something about it. I think that's important, because we need to have this national conversation about what children and families and each other are having in our services, not just from a safety perspective, but also a mid-year checking in about psychological safety and well-being, and practice that we are actually here to impact children's lives in a positive setting, and also our educators and our communities as well.
Yeah, and you said something before, especially with the mid-year with leaders and getting back to what they enjoy, especially that play side. It's like I feel like I've got two sides of the brain because I know what it's like doing the role, and your workload will pile up is what's in the mindset. But what would happen if every leader had to return to the floor, say for a month, especially when you know you have your slump? Like if your slump happens to be around June, July, because you'll often find your teams that are always on the floor are probably feeling the same way. Like if they had a month where they actually rotated and you did a bit of the on the floor, they did a bit of the admin side, it gives them a chance to learn some of that.
No, but I totally did that. So when I worked in Balmain, I used to time block. So I would have the two I see was never off the floor. It was just myself as the center manager, and the educational leader was in a room as well. So there was no anyone off the floor. But I didn't want to do. I mean, I just liked being with the children. So
It's the same with me.
yeah. But like what I wanted to do is I wanted to time block certain things. So I would go into the classroom setting and have someone else come out. There was always someone else in the room with me. So there'll be the assistant or the other educator, and that person would come out. But I'd also make sure throughout my week, if there was a 5 classroom setting, in Balmain there was, I would go into each of the rooms across the entire week to make sure at different junctions of time I would go in there, and I would know their routines. And I love doing story time. I've always loved doing puppetry and songs, and you know, brings me back to talking about Miss Conti, my the why I got into this space, the drama teacher. It's still within me, and being able to do that with children and getting them to have that engaging, I would make sure that I left the laptop, got out of the office, and went in, but also modeled what those kind of behaviors are. Because you know,
Mm.
doing a cert 3, I mean, I don't think many people observe how to do a group time setting anymore. It is important that center managers need to remind themselves that they are the coaches and mentors to showcase how to do things, not just to do a memo or do a staff meeting.
Yeah, and I have to on my parent lens because as a parent, it's pretty hard to teach. Like if you've only got one child, how do you teach them the group setting side? But I've noticed like that shift in your children, especially ones starting primary school, but also my son. Like if you need them to line up somewhere with you, it's just sounds like conformity how I'm saying it, but it's not. It's just like they've learned different side of social skills around being around more people, not just with you, with others. So when it comes when you need them to do that or something, or wait in line at Kmart, I'm going to reference Kmart like more. um, they've just built that up a bit more, like not just with you, because otherwise with a parent, and I say this all the time, it's like them trying to grab everything off the shelves, but because they learn it in different settings and contexts, they're like, oh no, I can actually just wait here with mum, and be okay with that not always doing. And I think that's where the group time and everything helps. Same with I'm glad you said you love the son side of it. I was talking to someone similar to this actually. It's a former director who loves working in the service and actually was looking to step down. Um,
Oh,
but
yeah.
we'll yeah, there's a lot of that out there. We're seeing a lot from area managers as
Mm.
well, which is good because it means there's a passion there. Um, but they were talking about like they know to certain services they if they have male staff, especially in the USH space, they might always be on the older kids,
Mm.
the more active kids. But
Mm.
there's that assumption, I guess, in the stereotype that that's the people that handle those older kids.
Mm.
Whereas where you say in the story time, I remember one of our greatest educators, and they were preschool trained, but primary trained as well, but preschool. And I remember for kindy orientations, like when they started, I actually put them on it, a male educator, because they knew all the preschool songs.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they'd happily go like walk around with the group, orientating them to the space because we did it for a few weeks to get them used to it, but singing all the preschool songs. Like, and
I
If
think that
we,
joy of singing for children is a lost art, and
yeah.
it's
Oh,
nothing better than seeing and hearing when you walk into early learning services, specifically that educators are singing with children, and you don't have to have a great voice. I mean, children don't care. I mean, but there is a space of tapping into the emotional space of the brain where singing and if you think about going back hundreds of years, what did people used to do around campfire? Like there is this space of song and singing, and that'd actually be a really interesting podcast to talk
I was
about
about,
the
yeah.
importance of that.
If anyone listening, the joy of singing is all start. I personally didn't have much of it in my childhood, so even now, I know I've worked in the space for 20 years, and this is sometimes when you're at the leadership level, you miss out on a lot of it. Like even now, I'm watching some movies I know we watched in a service, and I'm like, I didn't know this happened in this movie.
Yeah,
And
but
same with the songs. My kids are learning. I don't know them, or even the stories, like the princess stories. I'm like, I didn't know that's what Rapunzel was about. The other
yeah,
um,
yes.
but I think having that in the environment of the service, it's like I gather the joy of singing is like that. It's not a different sense, but it like triggers different things, like whether it's the vagus nerve, because I know humming goes along that.
Mm.
Um, could be very similar, and just maybe a sense of freedom also comes kind of from singing.
No, I totally agree. And you just touched on something that was important that I think I also want to address in this wrap up podcast is that we've had a variety of different people come on. Like we've had some males, we've had some females, and we've had this idea and this conversation. And I think if people listen to this podcast 10 years, 20 years in the future, like that'll be wild. I get to look at myself on YouTube as a where I think I'll look like the older version of myself, but in 10 to 20 years I'll be, I don't know, dated maybe a bit. But I do think that this space in our sector has a need and should have, a variety of different diversities in our space. We owe it to children, especially in our Australian society, to have children be exposed to lots of different people. So, lots of different people around male, female, different backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, people who are non English speaking people. I've worked with some beautiful non English speaking people with children. Of course, there's a conversation about written language and all those things, but there's so many great tools out there. And I think this idea of child safety in our services should be a conversation that we have. And I know that in our first couple of podcast episodes we spoke about needing national reform, and I hope that in the future when we look back at this and we are dated, that we actually have introduced a national criminal check, not a state-based criminal check for working with children checks. I think that's really, really important, and I'm excited to see all of the work and conversations that are happening. What the government doesn't do really well is they don't know how to, they have ideas, but actually rolling something out nationally is something that our sector has accustomed itself to. And I think something that I see in our sector is that we are quite agile. We know how to move when we have common goals together. We can be quite fractured, and we can see people not talking with the same language. And I think we are at a juncture right now where we need to talk about this idea of safety. And I think for myself, obviously I'm a male in the sector, and I've dedicated my life to this sector because of the history of my life and the joy that it has brought to me, and being able to make the impact, starting as a Certificate 3 trainee, working in every single role, working in multi-site management roles, not just here, but also in the States, and also working with a Singaporean organization as well, that I have worked with some beautiful educators, female, male, and, from a variety of different backgrounds. And I know that the media, over time, and especially right now as we're recording this, there is a national conversation about should males be in this space and this sector. And I think it's a conversation that needs to be had, absolutely.
Hmm.
But I also know that females can actually also hurt children. And there has been media news articles about that. And was in a recent Four Corners article where we discussed, and you saw it live on the podcast, Barbie, where
Mm.
there was a Snapchat video of a female educator slapping a child across the face and putting it on Snapchat, and that's disgusting. And I absolutely deplore any person who works in our space with the intent to hurt any child and affect that family's lives. And I'm disgusted beyond belief based on what we're seeing, not just in recent times around male educators, but also what I'm seeing around female educators. And we all need to have this conversation about, are children at the forefront of every single thing that we do? Are we making sure that when families are dropping their child off in a long day care service or an outside of school care service, that children are there to ensure that they're being developed in the most positive way for their age development? Are we creating great curriculum and experiences? And as educators, are we all advocating for the idea of safety and well-being in the workplace for team members, but also for the children, and making sure? And I think, Barbie, we both have had this conversation as a common thread about empowering our educators to make sure that we are present, we're there for the children, we show up, and we make sure everyone is safe. There is absolutely a space in this sector for a variety of people, and we need to make sure that we're doing really good inductions, good reference checking, and making sure that our rosters are done in an effective way to make sure everyone's being kept safe. And I think I welcome the conversation and I welcome the debate, and I think there's going to be some really good outcomes that come from this.
Yeah, and my uh, opinion on this is definitely I've always thought the national side, and I remember talking to someone high up like, why isn't it? And a lot are in agreement. I am probably going to say the wrong word, but it's like every state needs to put aside their ego because
Yeah.
all you need all the states to agree, and just like I feel bad comparing it to the gun reform, but I remember that just happened. It may have taken longer than I realized. In my memory, it's like that. It's at some point you just need to do instead of like, oh, I want to do it this way, I want to do it that way,
I
and
completely
just
agree. But
do
if you
it.
put yourself back there, I remember watching the news article, and I'm, there was John Howard, who was the prime minister at that time, and he went down to Tasmania, and there was a lot of gun lobbyists, and he wore a bulletproof vest, and he had to stand in front of everyone and stand firm and tall and say, "This is what we should be doing." And
Mm,
I think we now look back at that, going, "Oh my God, of course we should have been doing that." And the world has looked at Australia as a case study where, when I lived in America, people were so surprised. And then people's reaction was like, yeah, but you can get stabbed with a knife. And I was like, yeah, but at least you can't get an AK-47 and shoot everybody. Um, you know,
yeah,
so I do think we as a sector, we're powerful. We are one of the largest, I don't want to use the word industry, but we're one of the largest sectors, private, non-for-profit, whatever, workforce in Australia. And I think we should all come together as this conversation to make sure that we ensure that there is a national conversation, because there does need to be change. Why is there state working with children checks? It makes no sense. I don't understand it. There needs to be a register, and there needs to be tracking systems for where people are working from one place to the other. That doesn't include men. That also includes the people who put things on Snapchat. That
yeah,
includes all of these situations, and we've got to make sure that there's actually good repercussions for that. So we know there's good inductions, we know that there's good intake of people, and we can also see records of where people have been. So there's that history. We're working with the most vulnerable people in our sector, which is children. Um,
yeah,
and Barbie, you've had, your lived experience growing up. I know I did. And there were some really special people who were by my side in the moment of chaos, being homeless, not knowing what I was going to do, the uncertainty, the mental health that I went through over the years. And there were some really, really important people that helped me with that. And actually, it was teachers. It was
mhm,
Monty, the year 10 teacher, who gave up every recess and lunch, who was there by my side to help me through that. And sure, I was a teenager, and that's what I went through. But what about a child under the age of 5 or in an after school care setting?
yeah. I wish I went to after school care and early learning too myself. Like I feel like my world would have been so much different in a positive way.
And there's actually more good stories than there are bad stories.
Yeah, and even that, like you and I are both passionate about this. You probably noticed in every episode we touch on child safeguarding, regardless of what's in the news or media. I
Yeah.
don't like it when it's sensationalized and everyone jumps on a bandwagon and stuff. Because obviously, for every case that makes the news, there's hundreds, thousands that don't. And it's more about, I think, what people are doing continuously, regardless of what they hear or see elsewhere, and what in their own space as well, whether they're in a service or even what you hear of other people. Like, it's just been so aware. I called it, like, I think, what did I do? I was hesitant to even do a post on it the other day because I didn't want to do something generic and jump on a bandwagon and such. Because obviously also majorly pissed off and disgusted. But oh, like your armor. Like, what are you doing for your armor? Whether there's the trainee or director or provider, like what piece is everyone putting towards that armor, that suit? It's like, I know in the recruitment side, we got actually child safeguarding consultant advice when we started on what we can do on, because that's just my background being so over the top, it felt like at the time, because I know I told people, they're like, why, you don't own a service, it doesn't matter. I'm like, yeah, no, it does. Like, we're almost like a gateway. um and it was simple things in your armor of like, they look for the easy in. Often there's so many premeditated things to this, and it can be years premeditated before anything happens. um and just even what you put in a job advertisement, what might be on your website or social media. Like, if you've always got on your Facebook all the child safeguarding training you do, bloody this and that comes to visit and all that, they might think, okay, this service is pretty on top, or even sharing more of what like your policies are in that area, but actually proof that you're following those policies, they'll probably avoid those type of places. And look for, or if you're over ratio, you do this and that and that. Like, there's just these different things that would help kind of paint a picture of where they might not be able to do what they're going to do. And I even thought, because there's so many things that are popping up, and again, because I don't watch the news as much and not on social media as much, I'm not sure if it was before or after this came out, of talk of like the regulatory authority having CCTV um, in services. And I'm like, for people trying to do things, they're the type of people that will actually then try and go work there and watch those videos. Like, it's just like there's it sounds bad to say that they'll always try and look for a way in, and it's just everyone else being aware of, no matter who it is, if it's your best friend, not that you want to judge anyone in that way, but being just so aware when you're in the setting, and um of just how people are, what they say, what they do, everything. Like, there's just so many little different things. And in saying that, I've worked with so many people, and I don't even want to say males, because like you said, there's females that have been abusive to children as well. I've worked with so many people over the years, and I've never actually sat there and been really like judgy on everyone
Mm,
at all, ever. But I've always been aware,
mm,
always been aware.
mm. No, I think it's right. I think, you know, I thank you so much, Barbie, for doing this podcast this season. I really implore all of our listeners, reflect on our podcast, reflect on your practice, reflect on, making sure you find that joy in your day. Think about how your other educators are being welcomed to the environment.
Hmm.
How are we actually thinking about this idea of that it's not just one person in this, right? We're all in it together. um and we thank every single listener who has listened this season, and we really really appreciate you all. We can't do this without you, and please keep reaching out, keep telling us your stories. If you want to come on the podcast, we're very very welcome to. And yeah, Barbie, you're amazing. I'm so glad we're doing this.
Aw, I get so many compliments from Jamie. I'm only doing this podcast for the compliments. Get texts of how, like, it's so nice. No, I'm joking on that side. I'm now 40. I'm trying to learn how to take compliments. So thank you. It took me 40 years, but I'm getting there. Same with you. I'll get you taking compliments one day, I reckon. I notice you deflect them on how great you are. And even just when you talk, especially when we've got a guest on, oh my gosh, I love hearing um, that passion come out, that knowledge, and then still, even because you should be so proud, bloody high up, and then you can still talk and resonate so well with the ground level, and I feel like there's no disconnection, like, and
Thanks.
it's always in awe when I get to watch and see that, and it comes across so genuine. So yeah, well, it's an honor. Thank you.
I feel I feel very honoured that I've been able to face. We talk about people leaving the sector. I feel very, very fortunate that I've got the gift of time and experience that I've only ever worked in the sector, and I couldn't imagine doing it at, you know, I couldn't imagine doing anything else. Like, I'd be lost. I think it's a really special place to be, and I think if if people want to make a difference, this is the space to do it. And I think it's
Hmm.
a genuine thing that you can really. It's quite tangible. It's not, like a researcher might wait 10 to 20 years to kind of see that research into action. Like, you can really see that impact quite, and that you're doing it. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, anyway, we'll wrap it up. Thanks, Barbie. I look forward to all of the special guests for next season. And yeah,
Yeah, we got some good ones lined up.
oh my
We
God.
want more.
Oh my gosh, the people we got lined up. Yeah, this is going to be pretty cool. This is going to be a cool journey to go on. Thank you so much. See you later.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for listening to The Bold Blueprint.
If you'd like to get in touch, you can reach out to us on
elm.net.au or
fireflyhr.com.au.
bye.
Bye.